Today we're going to be talking about providing a safety net, which is welfare, uh, unemployment benefits, universal health care, and subsidized services like subsidized housing. You'll learn that later in the presentation. So your objectives are going to be, one, to explain the political debate on ways to fight poverty, like for example, the rich versus poor and how the free market economy affects those things. Identify the main programs through which the government redistributes income. You're gonna learn about TANF, more about social security, unemployment insurance, and workers' compensation. These are the key terms that you'll need to write down in your notes, so go ahead and pause the video right now and write your key terms. I'll go more in depth of these throughout the presentation. Okay, so the first thing is the poverty problems. And what this basically is saying is that the poverty threshold is affected by the free market economy because there is not much government involvement, and because of that, without government involvement, the government won't help the poor people as much, and the poverty threshold line also increases as the prices rise because of that. And the federal government adjusts to those prices periodically based on the cost of the goods the family needs to buy. The government's role, the main idea is that the safety net provides for the very young, the old, the sick, the poor, and the disabled. And the goals aim to raise the standard of living and make sure that people aren't living off of welfare checks all the time. And here's a short background over the welfare timeline. Started under Franklin Roosevelt under the Great Depression around 1920s, and then increased spending in the 1960s. And if you remember, as the prices rises, the poverty line rises. And so Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty helped a lot, but it kind of failed because, well, the unemployment rate was 19%, and because of those increased spendings, and the government had to adjust to those prices. The government had to adjust the poverty line because the employment rate was up so high, basically what that is. And then the federal welfare programs became more influenced in 1920 and 1980s, that's great. And the Congress responded by making changes in the welfare system in 1966. In the welfare system, note this, that new changes limit the amount of time people could receive welfare payments and gave states more freedom to experiment with anti-poverty programs. Basically means that, well, they're limiting the amount of welfare that they're giving out, and since they have more money to work with, that's how they can experiment more with the anti-poverty programs. And the basic idea is that the main government wants to ease poverty by collecting taxes from people or individuals and redistribute some of those funds in forms of welfare. Includes many types of programs that redistribute wealth from some people to others. And checkpoint, what is the goal of government welfare programs? So now let's talk about cash transfers. Cash transfers are basically helping the people in need. So first one is temporary assistance for needy families, and it's to move people from not relying on welfare checks and so they can join the workforce. Social Security, the program collects payroll taxes from current workers and then redistributes money to the current recipients. Unemployment insurance is funded taxes paid by employers, and the program is supposed to supply only temporary help. Workers' compensation is an insurance program for workers injured or disabled on the job. In-kind benefits. In-kind benefits, you refer back, are sometimes they can be free or it's a discount for the people in need. An example, food stamp program. It's a little card, has a magnetic strip across it, and it's kind of like a debit card they use in grocery stores for purchases. Subsidized housing, people are allowed to rent houses for less than regular rent, and the government pays the difference to landlord. For example, an apartment in Omaha costs, let's say, $600 a month for rent. You can't afford that. Let's say you can only afford $550. and so the government would pay the difference, $50, to the landlord. And legal aid is basically people who've committed a crime are in court, they can't afford a lawyer. The in-kind benefits of legal aid help them get a lawyer. Medical benefits, all you have to know for this slide is Medicare is for disabled people and people over age 65. Medicaid is mostly, the majority is for the unemployed. You have to remember that Medicare and Medicaid are extremely expensive, and on the other hand, Children's Health Insurance Program provides health insurance for children who are uninsured. Well, that's easy said and done. Which is also abbreviated as CHIP, funded by both state and federal governments. And also note that the states write rules for the program within federal guidelines. So let's talk about education. Education is more about grants. We'll talk about that in the green bubble. But the federal, state, and local government all provides educational opportunities for those who need aid. That's pretty straightforward. Federal government funds programs from preschool to college. So for example, scholarship grants. In addition, state and local programs aid students with learning disabilities. Education programs add to the nation's human capital and labor capital. And another one is improved education and technology can make the entire economy more productive. So back to human capital. Human capital is use of knowledge, and that knowledge comes from education, and from that education they can apply it to labor capital, because if they get an education and they have the knowledge for their field, then they can make money, and it adds to the labor capital.